doesn't mean you will come back. What if I can't?
Christopher Nolan is finally stepping into the world of Greek mythology, and if you thought this was going to be a straightforward historical epic, the Odyssey trailer makes it very clear that this movie has something far darker and far more ambitious on its mind. From haunting images of the underworld to storm-lashed seas and towering mythological horrors, this trailer feels less like a traditional adaptation and more like a survival story shaped by guilt, pride, and divine punishment. Welcome back to your nerdy show. I'm your host, Spoiler Master, and today we're breaking down Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey trailer to uncover the hidden details, mythological clues, and thematic choices you might have completely missed, and why this could end up being one of the most talked about movies of 2026. The Cyclops is the true turning point of the story. One of the most striking moments in the trailer is our first real glimpse of the Cyclops Polyphemus, and its presence confirms something crucial about Nolan's vision. He is not stripping the Odyssey of its mythological core. In fact, he seems to be leaning into it more than many expected. The Cyclops is not just another monster encounter on Odysseus' journey. In Homer's poem, this moment defines everything that comes after. When Odysseus blinds Polyphemus and later reveals his true name out of pride, he unknowingly seals his fate by drawing the wrath of Poseidon. The trailer subtly reinforces this idea. The Cyclops is presented not as a quick obstacle, but as a looming force, with its shadow alone conveying scale, dread, and inevitability. Nolan appears to understand that Polyphemus represents the moment when Odysseus' intelligence turns against him. His cleverness saves him in the short term, but his ego ensures that his journey home becomes a nightmare. By treating the Cyclops with a horror-inspired visual language rather than a traditional fantasy aesthetic, Nolan emphasizes that this encounter is traumatic, unforgettable, and spiritually damaging. It's the sin that echoes through the rest of the story. The Underworld represents guilt, grief, and war trauma. Perhaps the most haunting imagery in the entire trailer comes from Odysseus' visit to the Underworld. Soldiers rising from an ash-covered field, heavy mist filling the air, and Odysseus standing frozen as the dead surround him, all suggest that this sequence will be one of the emotional centerpieces of the film. In Homer's Odyssey, the Underworld is not about combat or spectacle. It's about knowledge, reckoning, and memory. Odysseus travels there to seek the prophet Tiresias, hoping to learn how he can survive Poseidon's curse and finally make it home. Nolan's version appears to expand on this idea by turning the underworld into a manifestation of Odysseus' unresolved guilt. The dead soldiers rising from the ground are not just spirits. They represent the cost of war, the weight of command, and the lives lost because of choices made in battle. Odysseus encountering figures like his mother, fallen comrades, and legendary heroes such as Achilles suggests that this sequence will force him to confront the emotional consequences of the Trojan War rather than just its victories. Instead of glorifying heroism, Nolan seems to be framing the underworld as a psychological descent where Odysseus must face the ghosts that follow him wherever he goes. Poseidon's curse explains the endless storms. The latter half of the trailer is dominated by storms, crashing waves, and a sense of constant motion without progress. Odysseus is shown rowing with his own hands, exhausted and isolated, while the remains of his once mighty fleet have been reduced to a single battered ship. This imagery is not random, and it directly ties back to the Cyclops encounter. According to Greek mythology, Poseidon's wrath is not arbitrary. It is a punishment rooted in Odysseus' pride. After escaping Polyphemus, Odysseus could have sailed away anonymously. Instead, he shouts his name back to the Cyclops, ensuring that Poseidon knows exactly who to punish. The trailer visually reinforces this idea by emphasizing repetition and futility. No matter how hard Odysseus rows, the sea remains hostile. Nolan seems to be presenting Poseidon not just as a god, but as a force of nature that responds to human arrogance. The ocean becomes a prison, one that strips Odysseus of his crew, his strength, and eventually his sense of certainty. Every storm feels like a reminder that intelligence without humility can be just as destructive as brute force. Agamemnon as a mirror to Odysseus. Early in the trailer, we see Odysseus bowing before a Greek commander who is widely believed to be Agamemnon. Later, in the Underworld, Odysseus encounters another figure who closely resembles him, portrayed by Benny Safdie. This parallel is incredibly important. In Greek mythology, Agamemnon represents a different kind of leadership failure. While Odysseus survives his journey, Agamemnon returns home only to be betrayed and murdered by his wife, Clytemnestra. By placing Agamemnon in both the living world and the underworld, Nolan may be using him as a cautionary reflection of what could await Odysseus. Both men are leaders shaped by war, but their fates diverge because of their choices. Agamemnon embodies authority, entitlement, and the belief that victory grants immunity from consequences. Odysseus, by contrast, is forced to learn humility through suffering. The trailer suggests that Nolan is drawing a thematic comparison between the two men, asking whether survival alone is enough if it costs everything else along the way. The Trojan horse defines Odysseus's greatest strength and weakness. The appearance of the Trojan horse in the trailer is brief but significant. It reminds us that Odysseus is not defined by physical dominance, but by strategy and intellect. We see the massive horse being dragged ashore, followed by a tense shot of soldiers hiding inside it, suppressing pain to remain silent. This moment reinforces that Odysseus's greatest weapon is his mind. However, the trailer also hints at the darker side of this intelligence. The same cleverness that wins the Trojan War is what later brings divine punishment. Nolan appears to be framing intelligence as a double-edged sword. Odysseus's ability to outthink his enemies makes him extraordinary, but it also fuels his pride. The Trojan horse becomes symbolic of the entire journey. It is brilliance that leads to triumph, followed by brilliance that leads to suffering. Nolan's mythic, not historical, approach. Much of the online criticism surrounding the Odyssey has focused on costume accuracy. From muted armor colors to the inclusion of pants and bulky designs, some viewers have questioned Nolan's commitment to realism. However, the trailer makes it clear that historical accuracy is not the goal. Nolan is not making a documentary-style period piece. He is crafting a myth. By leaning into a fantasy aesthetic, Nolan gives himself the freedom to treat the Odyssey as a timeless story rather than a historical reconstruction. His approach feels closer to epic fantasy films like Clash of the Titans or Jason and the Argonauts, but filtered through his signature grounded, tactile style. The Cyclops is terrifying not because it looks fantastical, but because it feels physically present. The Underworld is unsettling because it feels emotionally real. Nolan's design choices prioritize mythic weight over academic precision. A horror-inspired hero's journey. One of the most fascinating aspects of the trailer is its tone. Rather than presenting Odysseus's journey as a triumphant adventure, Nolan frames it as a descent into fear and uncertainty. The Cyclops is shot like a horror creature. The Underworld resembles a nightmare. The sea feels hostile and claustrophobic. Nolan appears to be taking the classic hero's journey structure and emphasizing the special world as a place of sustained terror rather than wonder. Odysseus's goal is not conquest or glory, it is escape. His journey home becomes a fight to leave the mythic world behind and return to a grounded reality where gods and monsters no longer dictate his fate. This approach makes the Odyssey feel less like a fantasy spectacle and more like a survival story shaped by trauma. Mystery as the marketing strategy. Despite being a full trailer, the Odyssey reveals surprisingly little. Major mythological figures like Athena, Circe, and the Sirens are largely absent. The A-list supporting cast, including Zendaya, Charlize Theron, Lupita Nyong'o, Robert Pattinson, and Elliot Page, are barely showcased. Instead of ending on a massive spectacle shot, the trailer closes on a quiet, intimate moment between Odysseus and Penelope, emphasizing that this story is ultimately about returning home. This mirrors marketing strategies used for films like Jurassic Park, where mystery itself became the hook. Universal Pictures and Nolan seem confident that his name and aesthetic are enough to draw audiences. The mythological elements are being deliberately held back, creating anticipation rather than overexposure. Why the Odyssey could define 2026. With 2026 shaping up to be a massive year for cinema, featuring major Marvel releases, franchise films, and new projects from legendary directors, the Odyssey still stands out. Nolan's track record, combined with the success of Oppenheimer, positions this film as a potential cultural event rather than just another blockbuster. The trailer suggests a film that is introspective, terrifying, and emotionally grounded, using myth not as escapism, but as a lens to explore leadership, pride, and survival. If the trailer is any indication, Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey may not just retell an ancient story, it may redefine how mythological epics are brought to the screen. Our nerdy thoughts. Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey is shaping up to be far more than a mythological spectacle. The trailer hints at a deeply personal journey about pride, loss, and the cost of survival, wrapped inside a world of gods, monsters, and unforgiving seas. If Nolan truly leans into the psychological horror, the mythic scale, and the emotional weight of Odysseus' journey home, this could become one of the most defining epics of the decade. As more footage and details emerge, there's no doubt this story will only get more layered and more haunting. Until then, keep questioning the myths, keep digging into the details, and I'll see you in the next breakdown.
No, what the heck, I'll laugh anyway.